But yeah, after the Navy itself, this is also a non-glamorous story. Goodness, I guess this is my story of my life right now. Uh, all my friends were getting MBAs, so I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go back to school and get my MBA too. So I got my MBA too.
This episode of Ken's Nearest Neighbors is powered by Z by HP, HP's high compute, workstation grade line of products and solutions. Today, I had the pleasure of interviewing Luke Barousse. You might have seen a collaboration video that we did last week, and I've linked that in the description below. Luke is a data analyst, a YouTuber, and a friend of mine. He did his undergrad at Ole Miss in mechanical engineering before serving 7 years as an officer in the Navy as part of the submarine force. During the first half of his naval career, he led engineering teams and was deployed 4 times. For the second part of his career, he was part of the training department for the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program, sending trained students to the main fleet. After the military, he returned to school for his MBA, where he specialized in business analytics. From there, he started as a business analyst and has now transitioned to a full-blown data analyst. In this video, we talk about how Luke's experience in the military shaped his career, how he made the switch into data analysis from an MBA, and how he got interested in content creation, which he does pretty heavily now, as you can see by his channel, linked below. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ken's Nearest Neighbors podcast. Today, I have an incredible guest for you, Luke Barousse. He's a content creator, has a history in, I believe it's the Navy, correct?
Correct, the Navy, yes.
And just has a really all-round fun story filled with a lot of projects and a lot of exercise and fitness as well. And I'm happy we could come in and share this conversation with you all. So Luke, thank you for joining me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This is honestly an honor. I've been watching the Ken's Nearest Neighbor podcast for a while. So it's like, oh, I'll get it up here. So I'm like, I hope I don't say anything bad. Can we cuss on this podcast or no?
Yeah, you can if you want to. I think we try to keep friendly for the monetization gods, but in general, whatever we say really goes. At the very worst, we can edit the real bad stuff out. So where you were talking about how you'd murder my family and those types.
You weren't supposed to mention
that. So just jumping in, the way I like to get familiar with my guests is understanding where they first got interested in or got some exposure to data and technology. I'd love to hear about that from your perspective. When did that come into your life and how did it impact you?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I guess it actually started before my time in the military. So I went to school for engineering and then I went into the Navy for 7 years. I served in the submarine force. And actually before in the Navy, I didn't do anything with data science. I was completely oblivious to anything. There was some like Excel sheets that we dealt with every now and then, but I would like give it to other people and like have them do all the VLOOKUPs and stuff. And I was like, wow, they're geniuses. Like they know how to use Excel. But prior to the military, when I was going through engineering school, we did do some coding, and we did, I think it was C++ at the time. We actually went through and programmed with it, and I built this like hotel check-in application. And I think I would say that's my first interaction with it, of building that. And that really got me like, I mean, obviously that's not really data science, if you will, but that's like using information, if you will, with coding. So it was cool because I built this one tool for this hotel check-in thing and then went into the Navy and got completely away from it. And it wasn't until I went back to school following the Navy, I went back to get my master's, my MBA, that I was taking a course on, basically it was like Excel on steroids. And we went deep into Excel itself. So started with the basics, then moved into VBA and then using it for all these different types of things. And it was really just sort of like an eye-opening thing for me to see how powerful of a tool Excel is. Although I do trash talk it a bit nowadays, now that I know other tools like Python and other stuff like that. But I guess that was, to answer your question, that was what sort of like the C++ introduction. And then once I got back to that Excel and I felt this passion, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. And then seeing how you can actually apply it to different data sets to get different insights, it was just like, the world was just completely came undone because I'd go into jobs and you just do some simple stuff in Excel, just like those people would do for me in the Navy, and they put together those reports for me. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, I would do the same thing once I actually learned and showed it to people and be like, oh my gosh, look how great this is. And it's like, well, it was actually just some like V lookups and maybe some left joins and stuff like that. And I was able to get this, but it was still cool nonetheless. And so that was sort of the spark of my data science journey.
Well, I really think that's interesting where you found the passion for it, you found the creativity. And a lot of the time I like to think of it as finding a little bit of a superpower almost, where you go in and once you uncover that these skills are viable, that you can do them, you realize how much power you have to build different things or to understand different things. And to me, that's one of the most motivating factors, one of the most incredible reasons why I continue to practice data science, is that the more I learn, the more the world becomes like my playground, the more things that I can explore, the more different things that pique my interest I can dive into and fundamentally understand better with these methods. And I think that that's, clearly something that you experienced as well. As before you were passing this off as magic and you're like, wow, it's cool that these other people are doing it. But once you start doing it, one, you realize that you're perfectly capable of using these tools. You're perfectly capable of building these things, but the amount that you can do with them is essentially limitless. And just walking through that door is such an incredible feeling.
Yeah. No, and actually, sorry to jump to another story, but just recently, so my friend he's going back to school for his master's, and he's trying to, he's specializing in cybersecurity. So he doesn't do that much coding, but what he was trying to do is try to understand, looking at financial reports, so 8Ks and 10Ks, the companies print out their 8Ks and 10Ks and have a lot of text information in it. And he's like, man, I really want to analyze these companies and see like what kind of words they're using within it, and see if I can try to pinpoint like if they're having like data breaches or cybersecurity breaches based on certain words they're using. And he's like, and he showed me this Excel sheet, and he was manually going through and searching, like Control F, like going to a company like let's think of like JP Morgan Chase, going to them for 2020, typing in a word, searching for it, writing down in Excel how many times he saw it, and then you go through all the years, and then you have to do, and he did multiple different companies. I'm like, dude, I can just like do whatever companies you want, and I can do whatever search terms you want. He's like, what? So like in a couple hours, I pulled all the financial reports for all these different companies you want, did a Python script to go in and search for all these terms. And yeah, I provided him this data set on it. And it's just like blowing his mind. But it's exactly to your point that you're making there. It's just like, if I would have never been able to do this like years ago if I didn't, I haven't picked up the skills over the thing. But it's just such power you can have once you learn a tool and you start to investigate it more and start to get more and more into it and start to understand it.
Well, that's a really interesting concept you brought up, that your friend is in this domain and he wasn't aware that could be done necessarily programmatically.
Right.
And I think that that's a bigger picture idea, that even within just different companies, there are plenty of companies that don't use data science, data analytics, because it's just not on their radar. They don't realize that this is a capability that they could leverage. It could make them a lot of money. They're very ingrained in what they're currently doing. And to me, that makes me think that there's a lot more data analytics, data science opportunities out there than we're currently presented with, because currently we're only presented with the opportunities where the companies are realizing that this could be leveraged. But there's so many different places out there that don't realize how easy it could be and how much value that these systems would create. And, that's one responsibility that I feel like I have, or like we have as people who produce content, is that you make these companies aware that it is pretty easy, or these things can be automated, or technology can help. And then you start creating a lot of these data science jobs, data analytics jobs for this huge community that we've built. I think that that's a very, very powerful thing. And just the idea, just knowing about it, is that first step. I mean, I'm sure your friend is like, wow, this is so cool. Like maybe I could learn that down the road now. and you might not
Yeah.
want to, but at the same time,
Uh-huh.
there's that spark, there's that ignition when you see how useful it can be.
Oh yeah, no, completely agree with that. And I've had projects in, I mean, just the capability itself, but I've had projects within my own company. And, they like, we only want to look at this single thing. We just want to meet this one KPI or this one metric. And I'm like, I'm looking at all these different other things that I'll be like, hey, we can actually evaluate a lot of different other attributes that contribute to this one KPI or this one key performance indicator. But sometimes I get pushback, but it's exactly to your point. We don't always know, or I think companies and people in general don't understand that the vast opportunity that's out there in data and understanding and what they can actually get from it.
Yeah. Well, I really like that. I think that a lot of people go into almost all scenarios assuming complete information. I hear so many people asking me, Ken, is the data science job market completely saturated?
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, well, on a large scale, if every company knows data is important and they're all hiring data scientists and they've all hired all the data scientists they need, that's complete information. And there's not going to be any jobs because this is a perfectly efficient market.
Mm-hmm.
That efficient market for data science jobs simply does not exist. There
Mm-hmm.
is, just as we described, so many organizations, so many companies. Let's say you're a data science contractor, you just have to let them know that you can do this thing that wasn't even on their radar, or that
Mm-hmm.
they didn't even think was possible, or
Right.
that they thought was just an idea, and facilitate that action for them. If you want to get work, that it's available, because there's also a limited market on their side. If you're going to this company and proposing the solution, you're literally the only person they know offhand
Mm-hmm.
that can implement that solution. And
Yep.
so it's this really, like, limited information can be your friend. It can also, for a data scientist, kind of be your enemy. But we're closing ourselves off to so many ideas by not just like realizing that everyone doesn't think how we do. Every company doesn't think the same. There's all these little inefficiencies, which could be
Mm-hmm.
rooms for jobs or rooms for these companies to make additional revenue or whatever it might be. And I just think that when I realized that, it was so eye-opening to me about how many opportunities are just in the world in general.
Mm-hmm.
Because frankly, by any stretch of the imagination, the world is not efficient.
Right. Yeah. Completely inefficient. And yeah, and that gets to your point, and I'm sure you see it on your channel a lot with that, is always get questions about people wanting to go into data science. And I don't know if they think like data science is like a field, if you will. Like, oh, I go in and I just look at, like, I don't think they understand that you apply data science in a specific field, like my friend's doing in cybersecurity field. He wants to go and dive deep into that. I work in the chemical industry, so I apply it in that aspect. I don't think people understand that domain knowledge, like you have to actually apply data science in a field, like you're saying, and then you can go and provide that value. And then if you start diving into this and you get a good enough a knowledge base of that industry, you can it's just limitless for you. So no, I completely resonate with your point. And another thing that I hate is I get people saying all the time, well, AI is just going to automate data analysis or data science, and it's like, well, I've seen like a lot of AI models, and they're they're not good. So I promise you, they're not going to replace us anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, I really love this theme of inefficiency, because that is in my mind precisely why AI will not automate everything. Because at least in the short, medium term, I think that there's a chance, 20 to 50 years out, that a lot more things are automated.
Yeah.
But companies, by definition, can still make profit even if they're lagging behind in AI, right? There's going to
Mm-hmm.
be, uh, contrary probably to popular belief, but I would say like 5% of companies, maybe less, don't quote me on these, but like a very small percentage of
Actual
companies,
statistic right here, people.
but a very small percentage of companies are even close to the cutting edge of data science or AI or any of these things. Like, there's so many out there that are not leveraging them effectively, even big companies. And so
Mm,
you're going to tell me over the next 10 years, as these companies slowly transition, because digital transformation does not happen quickly, right? So these companies are going to be slowly transitioning towards a more data-centric future. They're going to need to hire data scientists. There's like this lag effect where, you have to hire these people to be able to do this. And, there's a large portion, probably the majority of companies, that are still waiting to go through that transition.
Yeah.
And to the other efficiency that you mentioned with like how to, not realizing data science is something that you apply. I also see when people are getting in, they're like, there's only one track to get in. I have to major in computer science and statistics and do this and do that, and then get this master's degree and whatever it is. I don't think I've spoken to more than 2 or 3 data scientists that have gotten into the field in the same way. I mean,
Yeah.
there's this really, really cool story. It's one of my favorite examples of like exploring the averages. And so there's 2 examples from this, both military examples actually. So the first was with, I believe it was planes. I think it was during World War II. And they had made all of the specifications. Well, they were having a lot of inefficiencies flying. Like our air fleet was god awful. And what happened was they realized they made all of the specifications in the plane to fit the average person, right? So the seat lengths were, the legs were a certain length, and the seats were positioned just for the average human being. And what they realized, that the average human being was like virtually non-existent, right? Like the average human being, it's not a normal distribution, it's a flat distribution of all the people. They just average out to a normal distribution of height and weight and those types of things. So the problem is that they made this cockpit for legitimately like one very limited person who is such a small like portion of the entire population, right? And so the idea is, again, like we can have averages. Like if everyone averages out to that point, that doesn't mean like the histogram looks like everyone fits that average dimension. It's a fallacy. So what they did is they made the seats more customizable. They made it fit more body types, and that was like the single biggest challenge that they were facing in that domain. And it essentially saved quite a lot of people's lives and improved outcomes in that war. The second thing is actually a data related example. They saw people coming back. They were looking at where planes were shot at, and they saw that most of the planes, when they were shot in certain areas, they would still come back, and they're like, oh, we need to fortify these areas because they're getting shot at. What they didn't realize is that the planes that didn't come back were all shot in these other areas, right? So like around the fuel tank and those types of things. So you're looking at the wrong question to solve a certain problem. We should be looking and trying to figure out where aren't the bullets in all of these bullet holes in all of these planes, because that's what's sinking them all. That's what's knocking them out of the air.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that we can apply that within this profession really effectively, is like, look at what's not there. Look at this question in a different way, not just looking at the data that we can collect. What's the data that we can't collect? Everyone, not everyone talks about how they broke into this field, right? Not everyone is out there vocal about it. Not everyone is saying that you need to go this route. Just studying that information more effectively with a more complete data set can paint a significantly better picture. All right, I'll get off of my soapbox. I obviously was pretty excited. This is your podcast, not my episode.
It's my podcast. No, but that's such a great point that you bring, and I guess that tying into your original point. But my company is that going through that transformation as well, and it leads into that. Are we looking at the right questions that you exactly were pointing out right here? My company is going through a shift, and so we're starting to ramp up those data analysts and data scientists, and we're starting to see more of a demand for it in my company. I'm sure other people are seeing it as well, and hopefully along the way we're starting to ask those right questions on it. So fun fact about your I didn't know about that average height thing for the planes, but my friend on the submarine with me, he's probably like 6'4", 6'5", so tall person. He tried to go airplanes in the Navy, and they denied him because he was above the height restriction, but they let him go into a submarine. They were like, oh, you're fine on a submarine. And so he'd walk around the submarine because I think the ceilings were just like right above my height level, and he'd have to like walk around like all the time, crouched over.
No, he's a big sardine in a small can.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting tangent. I'd love to hear more about your experience in the Navy, in submarines, and what lessons you learned there that you can carry on into your data work or beyond that. Obviously, you'd mentioned that you didn't do anything necessarily data centric, but I think that, you still obviously learned quite a bit from those experiences, and I'd love to hear kind of like the how long you were there, but also the breadth and the kind of depth that you went into across the different like learning playing fields.
Yeah, no, that yeah, I'd love to share that. So let's see. So I was in the submarine force, like I said, and we have to go through a nuclear training pipeline, they call it. So it's a nuclear training. So you go to like school for 6 months, and then you also go to this like the schoolhouse, they call it, and you actually learn like basically a master's of nuclear engineering within 6 months. And then from there you go to a what they call prototype, which is like a this really old reactor, and you go and operate the reactor and learn how to do that. This whole training is about like a year long, and then you get shipped out to your submarine. I just tell you that because I'll get back to it. So that was my first year. And then I went out to my submarine, was there for 2 to 3 years. And while I was stationed to the submarine, we did 4 different deployments, spent close to like 2 years of my life underneath water. And really appreciate being outside now and mountain biking and not being underwater. So there's people that like have like 10, 15 years underneath water. So I'm nothing compared to them. So yeah. But so what translated though? The thing that I think for me that was the biggest translation is those communication skills and dealing with people. So I was in charge of this division on the submarine, and they were like we have multiple different divisions. Like some people are in charge of like their mechanics, they're in charge of like the pipes and stuff and working on it. And other people are in charge of the electronics. They're like the nerds, and everybody makes fun of them. And then they have other people that are like the electricians that work on the electrical thing. And funny enough, the electricians are the meanest people, and they put me in charge of the electricians. So, you can imagine like me showing up like fresh out of college and in charge of this division, if you will, with another counterpart, trying to lead this. But it was really good for me because it's like, hey, you got to work with this team. You have to work with people that have been in the Navy for 10 to 15, 20 years and have a lot more experience than me. But here I am, because I was an officer in the Navy. Here I am as their leader, if you will. And so it was a good humbling experience for me to understand how you can lead whenever you have a lower knowledge level than everybody. And you're basically, yeah, you're the leader, but you're the low man on the totem pole. And so it was really just an eye-opening experience for me to understand how to work with others and how to get tasks accomplished and how to have that camaraderie and that teamwork to get things done. And so that really, I don't know, I feel like that set me up for the rest of my time in the Navy, because after I got done with my time in the submarine, I was then my second half of my Navy, I got sent back to that training program that I was talking about, where I was an instructor. And same thing there, I was in charge of a team about 50 individuals, and we were in charge of not only running the reactor, but also training students along the way. And same thing, had people on my team that were above my skill level, above my knowledge level, but I was the person technically in charge, if you will. But it was just more of it was a great lesson in leadership and a great lesson in how to work with other people. So I guess how does that also tie into data science? Is now it goes into my YouTube channel because I was an instructor there. And really what I found while I was there is I have this passion for teaching others about things that I learned and about basically teaching them what problems I've had in the past and how to avoid them. And that was really that teaching aspect really sort of started after I got out of school, me getting into more social media to help others, because I'm just like a big proponent of helping others out so that way they don't have to repeat the same mistakes that I went through. So yeah, that was a pretty long ramble.
I loved it. So to that last point, one of my friends, Allie Miller, she's a huge proponent of mentoring in public. Like that's something that I think is really valuable. Like when you're talking to an individual person, yes, you can help them. But the idea is that, like, very much with the use case of this podcast, is that if you tell individual stories or you help someone with one problem, it's likely that other people have similar problems, and you can mentor or provide information, or you can provide teaching at scale. I think that that is so incredible. I mean, as much as everyone is unique and different, it's crazy how similar the problems are that I'm sure you and I see on a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis. And that's probably
Yeah. I
the
mean, look.
reason. Yeah.
I mean, I looked through your comments and I looked through my comment, and like the comments are pretty much the same on the videos, right? The people are having the same problems and are having the same questions. How can we answer them differently? How can we put a different spin on them so that way we can help that person out and help them understand it even better?
Yeah. Backtracking a little bit. So I loved what you said about working with people who are above your skill level or from, slightly different backgrounds. I think that that is so important in the data domain, and I really want to stress that. So let's say I work in a new company and I'm the new data scientist there. I'd probably be at like a senior level, something along those lines. And going in, I would have more advanced knowledge, maybe in some different algorithms or in like the visualization space or whatever it might be. But other data scientists, even if they're my juniors, might have significantly more specialized knowledge, maybe in like NLP, or maybe even within the company domain. And
Mhm.
realizing that rank or a lot of these things don't prevent you from continuing to learn and grow, and that you can learn from people who are ranked below you or ranked above you or whatever it might be. I think that that is so valuable, especially in this domain, because frankly, a lot of data scientists, data analysts do have egos, but I don't think that this is a field that you can excel in with a very large ego,
Yeah.
because you'll just constantly be humbled, because there's so much information, there's so much stuff to learn, that sometimes you kind of just gotta put your head down and pick it up and learn from other people. And there's absolutely no shame in doing that. And I also think you're a little foolish if you're not learning from other people and their experiences and those types of things. So that's a shameless
Yeah.
plug, like watch this podcast or else. No,
Watch it or else. But no, to your point, exactly to build on that point, my first my first internship where I was basically working at doing basically a data analysis project. I went into working in there was for the company I work for now, and I have no knowledge of where I was working in supply chain. And I mean, I took classes on supply chain, but I'm no expert on it. But I used what I had from the Navy, and exactly what you're saying there about talking, like being able to be humble and talk with people that are maybe like more technically competent for you than you, and even though maybe they work for you. So I mean, I feel like the Navy taught me so much about that, because I went in there and just like, I would just, hey, be like, hey, I don't know much about this field. I need your help. And so my boss was super helpful with getting me up to speed with it and helping me with building this project for this data solution that I was getting. But then I was also going to the people, I guess you could say, below me, if you will, and then talking to them about, hey, well, we're implementing the solution, and try to get their insights from it. And, it can be a humbling thing, because like I went to one person and they were not receptive of what I was doing. And they were not happy. They were like, this is bad data. Da, 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 da. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, I mean, I've been yelled at a lot in the Navy. So I'm like, I don't really care. It didn't bother
that's
me, but
another
it was
thing you
just,
learned. So
yeah, I've been yelled at a lot. Anyway, that's a separate subject. But anyway, so they did like complain to me, so I'll like let them vent or whatever. But anyway, you talk to them, and then you are able to understand, okay, so what is your problem? And you can actually dive into the details more, and you can then use their actual concerns once you get past that abrasiveness that they have and implement it into the solution, able to make it better. I was able to make my solution better because of that person's insight. So yeah, just sort of, sorry, a little ramble there, but I wanted to sort of build on the point that you talked about, like, hey, it's about also talking with people above and below you to understand maybe they have a technical competency on the subject that you don't know.
well, honestly, that's one of the things about YouTube and content that I'm so grateful for, is that some people are less than nice, but even still, some of those people have legitimate feedback that can be valuable. That's something I wish I had learned earlier in my career. I mean, so for a while I was the product owner at at a startup in Chicago. I don't know if it was a startup, high growth company in Chicago.
Nice. I like that. Yes, high growth.
And I was in charge of managing all of the dashboards that were put on all the TVs. And I remember going into this office for the sales leader whose team was using all the dashboards. And the guy just yelled at me about how bad the dashboards were, how useless they were, all these types of things. And he wanted the old stuff back up. And the new stuff was significantly better than all the old stuff. It had all the stuff, all the same stuff the old stuff did as well, just significantly more effective way of conveying it. And, you know, the first meeting I had with him, I took it super personally. I was like, you know, he doesn't like this, you know, this guy's an idiot, whatever it might be. And then the second meeting, same thing happened. And then I just kind of took it, and I realized that he needed to vent about this. And then we got to like the actual meat of the problem, is that the one thing that he relies most heavily on was in a different part of the dashboard, and it wasn't as emphasized as much. And that is such an easy fix. It was literally just like moving something, and everything else. He's like, oh, I actually really liked like most of the other stuff. You know, this just one thing, like we can't have that. And I was like, thank you. And, you know, behind closed doors, it's like, really, that was it? Like you couldn't. That was it?
That was your problem?
But, you know, some people need to yell at someone. Some people need to take that information out. And
unfortunately.
Especially in the sales domain, frankly, like it's high energy, high stress. Like I get it. I wasn't working in sales. I was on the data side. So, you know, I'm not familiar with that. But, you know, that is, I don't recommend just being someone's punching bag or anything along those lines.
No.
But that is an important part of realizing that, like, look, some people need to communicate, some people need events, some people need to do those things. And if you can see what's the underlying reason, if you can cut through a lot of that, one, you won't take it as personal, right? If I could just see that, hey, like there's something bothering this person, it's about them, not me. But if we can tease out what that is, that is such a valuable skill and an important skill that I think everyone can hopefully learn from. Hopefully you don't have to get yelled at or go through, was it 5 or 7 years in the
7 years? Yeah.
7 years in the Navy to learn that one. But this episode is brought to you by Z by HP, HP's high compute workstation grade line of products and solutions. As datasets get larger, unraveling meaningful insights can become more time consuming and costly. Z is specifically made for high-performance data science solutions, and I personally use the ZBook Studio and the Z4 workstation. I really love that Z workstations can come standard with Linux, and they can be configured with the data science software stack. With the software stack, you can get right to the work of doing data science on day one without the overhead of completely reconfiguring your new machine. These powerful machines are being used to solve real-world problems as well. If you're a student and you want to get your hands on one of these, there's a great opportunity right this second. HP is hosting a Kaggle competition to identify and localize COVID-19 anomalies, and the student team that scores the highest will receive a top-of-the-line ZBook Studio. Now, back to our episode. So something that always fascinates me is the decision points in people's life. So I would love to understand what made you decide to go into the Navy, and then also after the Navy, what made you decide to pursue an MBA for continued education?
Oh gosh. Okay. So what made me go into the Navy? I don't know. Well, I don't know if I have like a good like patriotic thing. Like when 9/11 happened, I was I do remember where I was for 9/11. But I don't really have like that much. It was more in high school. I did junior ROTC, JROTC. And I had instructors there that I really looked up to that served in the Navy. And so I decided I was going to just go for this Reserve Officer Training Corps, ROTC, in college. I was going to try it out for a year and just give it a shot. And so, I went for it for a year. And then I really wanted to, I wanted to pay for my college. But two, I don't know, I just always felt like this need to, just like give back. I don't feel like I owed anything, but I guess that was my one thing. I just had like some sort of patriotism towards thinking that I needed to like serve. So it's not really a glamorous story. It was more like I tried it out. I thought I wanted to do it, and I just sort of stuck with it. But yeah, after the Navy itself, this is also a non-glamorous story. Goodness, I guess this is my story of my life right now. all my friends were getting MBAs. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go back to school and get my MBA too. So I got my MBA too. But this is a great segue because I'm like my sort of my whole life, I'm doing a lot of things like that people around me are doing. And data science is like the one thing that nobody around me is doing. Like I had to like reach out, I had to like find people on YouTube like you and then Centex and people like that to understand like you can actually start doing this data science thing. And so, sorry, this is sort of a segue for data science, but it's finally the first thing in my life that I've actually like really chosen and actually made a decision for. Whereas other points in my life, it's sort of like me just going with the flow. And I've really been more passionate about this now. Not saying I'm not happy about serving the Navy. I'm very happy about that. So I love my country.
Well, yeah, I think that, like, first of all, that's completely fine. I think that a lot of times it's easy or it makes sense to go with the flow until you find what's out there for you. I mean, if you're going with the flow, you're following what most people are interested in, right? And if you're following what most people are interested in, one, there's a decent chance that you're also interested in that. But two, that frees up a little bit of mental energy for you to explore and think about other things. You know, we go to college and we study economics or we study whatever it might be, to be around people that are, you know, working towards this goal. But also, I think a lot of institutions, a lot of these places are designed to create a little bit of randomness, to encourage you to try new things, to explore these things. And I've never looked at going back to school personally as something that was in order to like because I like needed it. I looked at it as a way to expand my horizons. And, you know, it was not a cost effective way to do that. And I never recommend people to get a debt. I think there's probably better ways to do this now. But I was always you know, my philosophy was when in doubt, go back to school, because that buys me time. That allows me to search for myself more. That allows me to experiment more. And that trade-off for money in the short term, then it made sense for me, especially because I didn't have to pay off my student loans for like 10 years down the road. And I was, you know, in hindsight, that's a little bit of a different trade-off, but I wasn't as quite a long-term thinker back then. But I mean, that is what you're effectively doing, is when you're pursuing these things, you're freeing yourself up to learn about yourself. And by following the crowd, you also can learn what you don't like. If you're doing, my philosophy is just doing something is better than doing nothing. Long story short, too long didn't read. Do something rather than do nothing.
No, and actually, that's actually a great point, because so I'm lucky, right? Because I was serving the military, so I got the GI Bill, and so they would, if it's a public university, the government foots the bill for it. So I was able to go back to school and learn on my own without having to worry about getting this debt. But that was my intention, exactly what you're saying there. Going back to school, this MBA, I can explore it. But also while I was in school, I was able to focus on that data analytics and get back to that, because they offered that as a specialization. So I was able to more fine tune what I wanted to learn. And just it allowed me that opportunity, exactly like you're saying, to dive into and explore what I actually had a passion for, and then start learning and applying that more.
Awesome. And so to that point with that specialization, you know, do you think an MBA is a reasonably viable route to getting into the data analytics domain? Or, you know, if you were to do it differently, would you have, you know, gone down a different route? I actually don't really like those questions where like, would you have done it differently? Because I'm not someone that thinks that way. I'm like, this is what I did. I can't change it. And someone in a situation, no one has ever been in the exact situations that I was in. So like my advice of like, if I would have done it differently is probably not going to stick with anyone, because they didn't live my life to that point. But I digress. I'm still going to ask the question though.
No. So if somebody wants to be a data analyst, would not recommend an MBA. No, like not the way to go. I am interested in, like, I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm interested in business. So what I learned from school and how it trained me how to think about different business scenarios and different portions of the business world. I thought it was beneficial to me, and I really enjoyed it. I wish, however, I didn't like my school. It did a little bit with data, so like Excel, and we learned R. And so that was the one thing about school that I didn't like, because it didn't teach me the skills that I enjoyed. But I had to go out on my own to learn it. But because I had to go out on my own to learn it, it was my passion. I had to devote my own time. And it's sort of like I don't want to say self, it makes you appreciate it more. And so now I have these skills, like I demonstrate with my friends, like that cybersecurity thing, where I used Python to do it. I had to learn all those Python skills on my own. And so now I'm thinking, like right now, well, if school would have taught me that, would I have appreciated it? Would I have used it? So I'm getting to like really philosophical right now.
No, well, so to be honest, for some reason, I've been listening to a lot of David Goggins podcasts and clips recently. I think part of this iteration of 66 Days of Data, I'm going to try and listen to some motivational stuff every morning just to get me fired up. Like, you start the day ready to run through a wall. And one of the things that he describes, I mean, are you familiar with David Goggins and his sort of philosophy? No. So David Goggins is like, he's an ex-Navy SEAL. He's like a lunatic. He did buds with 2 broken legs, made it through. He's runs these ultra 100-mile marathons. He's a great book. It's called Can't Hurt Me. I highly recommend it.
Okay, I'm gonna check this out.
He's like an absolute specimen. But the thing that differentiates him is his mindset, and the idea is that you do difficult things, or you should do difficult things, because it like calluses your mind, and it's like a muscle. Like, if you do difficult things, you can do more difficult things. But it's also more rewarding. Like, everything that you've done with Python, for example, you've earned it, right? You've put in the time, and it means more to you if you put the effort in to accomplish something, rather than for it to be given to you or taught in a more straightforward way. And we don't necessarily reflect on the things that we've accomplished. I mean, it's impressive to learn a programming language on your own. I think that that's like a really incredible, cool accomplishment. But nobody pats himself on the back enough. Nobody says that, hey, I did this. This means I can do other really incredible things. Right. For me, that experience was going to get my master's in computer science, right? I had no computer science undergrad or formal education before that. I'd done Code Academy for like 2 months, and I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to go all in. If I can do this, if I can learn this new domain that I think is really cool and graduate with this degree, I think I can probably do anything cognitively, because that, to me at that time, was this overwhelmingly difficult obstacle of, again, learning this new field that I had super limited exposure to. But after that, after accomplishing that, it's like, well, learning a new module, okay, I can do that. I know I can do that. And it's meaningful to me. And so the idea that we're putting in time, and we're like, when you're doing that, one, you're building this memory bank to go back on, but you're also kind of doing training for life in general, is that when you have the next hard thing, you're able to face it, and you're able to do it, and you're able to excel. And I don't know, I love that philosophy. I don't implement it probably as well as I could, but highly recommend it. It's not for everyone. He's very, very extreme. But I think the taste of the extremeness, or seeing what other people are capable, is really, really inspiring. And, again, we don't talk about our own victories enough, and we really do appreciate things more when we have to work for them.
Right. Yeah. No, completely agree with that. No, I completely agree with that. And I guess relating this, to my Python journey, if you will, but it's just like those small, I think you exactly to your point, that you have to celebrate those victories, because like a year ago, I probably couldn't have done this cybersecurity thing. And I would have said I know Python, if you will, but it's that slow progress of, okay, now I understand pandas of this library. Now I understand more about NumPy. And then you're slowly building and expanding that knowledge set. And then you're just, what you can accomplish like a year from now and 2 years from now. It just keeps on growing. Like it's not even like linear, it's exponential of your capabilities if you just continue to that self-improvement.
Yeah. And that's something that I've definitely experienced as well, is that like I think that there are certain thresholds in our lives. And like once you reach a certain threshold, the growth rate changes. Once you reach another threshold, the growth rate changes. And it's less of like fighting growth and at that point in time, and it's more about how do you want to prioritize your time, right? So for example, we look at YouTube, I was able to grow, very fast over the course of a couple of years. Now, obviously growth has settled down, but the number of opportunities that are presented in front of me are so much greater. And now the harder question is choosing what I want to work on. What is the best use of my time, rather than what can I do to make this grow as much as possible? And I'm a little envious of like I'd love to put 100% of my focus back on YouTube, right? It's just fun. It's such a cool endeavor. I can combine it with anything I love, whether it's sports, whether it's data. But at the same time, am I maximizing who I am? Am I like creating the most impact? Am I like happiest if I'm just working on YouTube? No, some of these other opportunities are so cool. I mean, this podcast, for example, like I love coming in, talking to people like yourself, understanding your story, maybe talking a little bit too much, and just
I don't mind.
but again, this wouldn't be possible if I didn't decide to dedicate that time and put in that effort of sitting down for more than an hour each week just talking to people and recording it and putting myself out there for
that. No, and I completely agree. It's so much about, you get to the point that it's definitely more about you have to figure out how you're going to allocate your time and what is going to be the most effort for your time, and how are you going to help others in the most efficient way possible. I was just recently in a conundrum because I used to be able to just like devote time to teach people how to like do stuff like we use Microsoft Power BI in my work, and so I used to do like these training sessions for like one-on-one training sessions. But now I can make a video, right, and maybe and definitely affect and influence a lot more people. And so it's like, okay, my worth, I can make this video and make a much more impact than just these few people. And so recently, like it was at work, it came to the point like, oh, can we get some training or whatever for these few people? And it's like, well, why don't you like go to my YouTube channel instead? Like we can actually get this done a lot quicker and save some time. But no, just being able to actually efficiently manage your time. I think everybody can agree with that and appreciate the burden sometimes with it.
Yeah. Well, and there's also other stuff that comes with it. I mean, I'm realizing that I need to create better systems for myself to manage this time. I'm realizing that if I want help to come on to help me do these things, I need to have systems for them so that I don't spend more time managing people than actually doing the work that I care about. And it's this really delicate balance. And I also think that it's important to remember that like organization is one of the key things that you can do around learning data science or any of these things, is that the more control you exert over your time, it seems like the more time you have, which to me is in short supply these days.
Yes. Oh man, organization is just key. I'm not trying to put a plug for Notion, but just being able to write things down and keeping track of them. I don't care what it is. Like Tina had that great video on her taking notes, and recently, I think that if anybody can get anything out of this, it's just understanding that you have to be organized. If you're not organized, if you're not keeping track of things, you're not writing things down, you're probably being inefficient. And there's probably a better way that you can go about doing something.
Well, let's talk about organization and sort of how you structure a life. So I know from seeing some embarrassing interviews of yours that you're in very good physical shape. You like to do a lot of mountain biking. You're also producing content on YouTube. You're building coursework. You're also working full time. How do you organize that? How do you make all of that possible and feasible? And can you make that fun? Is it fun for you, the whole process, or are you just like swamped and dead? I mean, you obviously don't seem like you're like that fun.
So that's a great question. I would love to start like a lifestyle YouTube channel where I just talk about like fitness and mountain biking and see where it goes. Um, so how do I organize it? So first thing, when I was in the Navy, that the one complaint I have about the Navy, we were like, oh my gosh, I was probably getting like 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night. And I would like throughout the day completely unproductive. And so I sort of tell that story because the first thing I focus my life around is getting probably 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Like I have to, like, if I get 7 hours of sleep, I'm not the same person. Last night I got 7 hours of sleep and I'm like, I'm on
Imagine
my
what this
fourth.
interview could be if you got 8.
It would have been so much better, guys. But I'm drinking a lot of coffee today. But it's funny. So that's where the base starts. I have to get 8 hours of sleep. I go to bed at a certain time and I wake up at a certain time. And very similar to you, I'd like, hey, get rid of the phone, get rid of the technology an hour or so before bed and reading. And so, and this is getting into how I structure my day because sleep is the base. Next thing that comes that most important is physical fitness. And so usually 5 to 6 times a week, I do CrossFit. So I'll go to a local gym here. Please do not Google, like Ken mentioned, please do not go and look up a YouTube video of me doing fitness. Don't look at it.
I'll link it in the description.
I'll link it. My friends, whenever that came out, they were just like, oh my gosh, you look so ridiculous. I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyway, so CrossFit, I do CrossFitting and mountain biking. And I found that my mental health is directly tied to my physical health. If I'm not working out, I can just I feel myself getting sluggish. And that's not to say like I have to be like lifting weights and doing stuff. Like I went this morning and went for like a 30-minute walk or whatever. And so what I try to do is at least have one CrossFit session and one mountain biking session every single day. And I usually try to use those to break up the day. And, I got a lot of, I made a day in the life video and it was a Friday and I got a lot of slack and a lot of like negative comments because it was a Friday and I only really worked like 6 or 7 hours. But everybody was like, oh, you didn't even work or da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, well, actually, if you like looked at the work I did, it was pretty productive work. Like I had some meetings, I developed a dashboard and I launched a dashboard. I did a lot during the day and I felt it was productive. Yes, it was only 6 to 7 hours. Is that a normal, like every day I do that? No, but I wanted to just show that, yes, you can implement some fun in it and you can implement activity along with your work. And so, yeah, that's what I do. I like to go on these like sprints that I call it. I'll work for 2 to 3 hours. And then when I'm starting to grab my cell phone and like go on the Instagram and and my mind starts wandering, I'm like, nope, time to get out of in front of the computer screen because I'm not being productive. Go do some activity. And then what I find is I'll go out and it's like you recharge after this because I come back and I'm completely more focused. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got to do this, 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 and this. And then I'll just go on another 2 to 3 hour sprint until I start doing the same thing again. So yeah, that's how I guess I structure my day. Sleep and then activities combined with sprints of work throughout the day.
You obviously have described how you're sharing your experience, you're sharing your work across YouTube and some of the other social platforms. I will be happy to, I will link a bunch of those in the description below. I'd love to hear more about your journey, why you decided to create this content. Obviously, it comes from a little bit from the teaching side when you were in the military, but maybe what you've also learned from this experience or where you'd like to take your content in the future.
Yeah. So I guess let's start with where did this start and then where I think it is going. So first it started with, I was just wanted to experiment in college. I think we had talked about this a little. What's that?
You said you wanted to experiment in college and I said, don't we all?
Don't we all? So I was learning Python whenever I was back getting in my MBA, right? And I'm like, I'm going to build this. I was big into, like I said, I'm big into CrossFit. I was big into this meal planning. I'm like, I'm going to build this revolutionary meal prep application. And so to build this meal prep application, I need to learn Python. and I'm going to use this to build like the Django web framework to build this. And I didn't even know Python, and I'm trying to implement Django web framework with Python. I almost destroyed my computer because it was such a humbling experience. That's why I'm always, and I appreciate you talk about like start small. Do not start with a Django web app as your first Python project because you will fail. So yeah, I wanted to do that, and then I was trying to build up some attention with it, and I just started this Instagram account where I was posting like meals and stuff like that. And slowly I got away from the application itself, and I was just posting a bunch of pictures of food. And then people started to be asking me a lot of nutrition advice. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like a data nerd. Like I shouldn't be like answering these questions about nutrition advice. So sorry, that gets to the point of why I got into this. But social, I really like found the social media was really neat because I could influence others and help people out. And yeah, so then people started asking about this data science stuff. So I shut down the Instagram on my meal prep account, and I just started building up my YouTube on helping people out with learning different things. And like I said, I used to, at my company, I would give lectures on Power BI and Tableau and try to teach people of these things. I was like, I can make this into videos. And yeah, it sort of just transformed over the past year, because if you look at my first few videos, I was doing instructional videos, and I'll probably leave that to the data professor because he can do way better than I can at these instructional videos, because nobody was watching my instructional videos. So I just slowly tried to try different stuff, try different things. And it seems like I got into more with learning or more with explaining some tech stuff and got more traction with that. And then now more into telling people what are options for getting into data analytics with different certificates and also with explaining my background. So I guess that answer gets to your last question that you had. Where is the channel going? And now I'm actually seeing there's a need for people need help with understanding how to get into this field of data science, how to, going back all the way to the beginning of our conversation, how can they apply data science and data analytics into their field? And maybe what are some different ideas for gaining traction in this? So yeah, that's where I think it's going to go now. And basically came from a tutorial type channel to now like a Kenji type channel of trying to basically I'm trying to be Kenji, but I was trying to put it more politically correct than that. But yeah, so no, I'm really liking it, and mainly I can see whenever I get, you mean it's like endorphins go off whenever people are like, oh, this is such valuable content that's really helped me understand better of how I should transition to data science or how I should go about this problem. So it's it's been so much fun, and the channel's just sort of taken off this year, but I guess we'll see where it goes.
I love that. I think it's good to leave it open-ended. I wouldn't say the world could use more Kenjis, but I will say that I am looking forward to the future of your content and the direction you take. And obviously we've been talking about some collaboration together. So it is in writing as well as on video. So we're gonna have to do it.
Yeah.
So everyone can expect some kind of fun integration and a lot more of Luke Bruce in the future. That's really all I had. Are there any final words of wisdom, any parting thoughts that you might have, or should we call it here?
Oh, no, I think we're good. If you stayed to the end, wow, awesome. Hit that subscribe button on Ken's Nearest Neighbor. It's right. I don't know where it's at, but make sure you hit subscribe and get that hit that bell icon too, because this is great content.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Luke, and I will talk to you later.